Well, it's great to have you with us today. If you are joining us from Ossian campus, we want to welcome you into the room. If you are in the Family Life Center, the FLC, our gym, we want to welcome you into the service this morning. If you are joining us online, we want to welcome you in to the service this morning. We are one church that meets in multiple locations, and we are in Sunday number 2 of January 2026. How many of you have written 2025 on something? All right, yes. Okay, I have. I mean, it's kind of like, about the time I figure out how to get 26 on there, it'll be 27, right? Anybody with me? All right, yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it works. Well, several years ago, a buddy of mine decided that he was going to sign up and he was going to run a half marathon. Now, you just have to know this about this guy. He was not a runner. Had never been a runner in his life. But he decided for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just maybe a midlife crisis or maybe he was just tired of feeling tired. Whatever the fact was, he signed up and he decided that he was going to run this half marathon. And so day one, he was all in. Brand new shoes. Got the new gear, the running gear. He downloaded the app on his device and he posted about it on social media and he was all in. Day 30, totally different story. His knees were sore, his feet were blistered. He had a busy life. He didn't expect it to get as busy as it did, and he had zero motivation. In fact, one night he called me and he said, "Dude, I'm done. I'm done." And so I asked him, I'm like, "Why did you sign up to do this in the first place? You are not a runner. You've never been a runner. Why would you do this?" And there was this pause, and then he said something that I will never forget. He said, "I just wanted to prove that I could finish something that mattered. I just wanted to finish something that mattered." That's the difference between people who quit and people who finish. Somewhere in the midst of it, we lose the fact that this matters. It's a believing that what you are actually doing matters. It begins when you wake up and you decide that today matters. Who I am becoming matters. It matters how I live, how I operate, how I friend others. It matters more than I realize. It begins when you decide, I am going to, from this point forward, live life like it matters. That's when things change. Which brings us to the big idea of our time together today, which is simply this. You won't live like your life matters until you believe that it does. You won't live like your life matters until you truly believe that it does. Last week, we talked about how our life matters to God, how he doesn't just give us a brand new year, but he gives us a brand new heart. That's his desire, is to place within us a new heart. This week, we're going to get practical. Because it's one thing to know that your life matters, but it's quite another thing to live as if it does. And so today what I want to do is I want to hand you 4 anchors, 4 things to hold on to when life is pulling you under, when life is pulling you adrift. Because here's the truth, life has a current. It has a current. And if you're not anchored to the right things, then you drift. Now, maybe you're here today and you're not even sure where you stand in your journey with Christ. You're not even sure what you believe about God, but you're curious. Maybe you're even skeptical and you're trying to figure things out. Let me just say that if that describes you, you're in the right place, and I am so thankful that you're here. Because even if you're still wrestling with belief, your soul still craves something solid, something real, something meaningful. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Anchors that hold steady in the storm, that help us live like life really matters. And today what we're going to do is we're going to go into Joshua chapter 1. It's a famous chapter. You've probably read this before, Joshua chapter 1. So go there in your Bibles. And before we jump in, let me talk to you about where Joshua is emotionally and spiritually. Now we know where he's physically, but where is he emotionally and spiritually? Verse 1, we're told, verse 1, verse 2, Moses is gone. Moses is gone. The leader who spoke to God face to face. The guy who came with the tablets down off the mountain and the miracles that he performed, he's not coming back. Moses, my servant, is dead, verse 2. And now Joshua is stepping into this moment of transition, and he's standing on the very edge of the promised land with the memory of Israel's past failures. Just think about that. We never look at it that way, right? I mean, we always talk about, oh, what's out in front? But think about all the past failures that Joshua now has heaped on his shoulders. Moses, the greatest leader in the Old Testament that we know of, now Joshua has to take and go, okay, we're going to go forward from here. 40 years earlier, Israel was right here at the banks of the Jordan. Same place, same land, same giants. Back then, fear won. The people backed out, and they wandered in the desert for 40 years. And it's in that moment when the past is heavy, the future is scary, that Joshua steps in feeling unqualified, that God speaks to him. And let me show you something powerful. If you just scan with me through Joshua chapter 1, the first several verses, God says the same phrase 3 times. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. It shows up in verse 6, again in verse 7, and then again in verse 9. You have to understand, this is not a filler. This is God using a highlighter and saying, hey, be strong and courageous. In the Hebrew culture, repetition wasn't wasted space, it was an emphasis. God was saying, don't miss this. Be strong and courageous. And so we see Joshua standing on the edge of the promised land, and God knows what he's feeling. And so he says in verse 9, have I not commanded you, here it is again, 3rd time, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Notice what God doesn't say. God doesn't say, come on, Joshua, you've got this. Don't we say that to each other all the time? Come on, you got this, you got this, you got this. He says, I've got you. And that's the difference. That's the difference here. God isn't asking Joshua to feel brave. He's reminding him who's walking with him. The great I am is walking with him. And maybe you hear that and think, well, yeah, but that's Joshua and that guy, he was leading a nation. I'm just trying to survive Tuesday. I get it. But let's be real. You've had those moments as well. You're standing on the edge of something that feels bigger than you. It could be parenting for the very first time. It could be parenting, do I dare say it, teenagers? I mean, they kind of lose their brain for several years, right? Anybody with me? Yeah, I mean, they just kind of lose their brain. And so maybe it's about starting over and sharing your faith, or maybe it's trusting God with your finances. You've put everything, you've tried everything on your own, and deep down you wonder, maybe it's something that you're facing, you go, am I enough for this? I don't know what that is for you. That tension, that's where God starts this conversation with Joshua. You see, he's not looking for your confidence. He's offering you his presence. I will be with you wherever you go. And that foundation is the foundation to this whole message. Not just that you're called, but that you are not alone. Because in this next season, it's not about surviving. It's about stepping into what God is preparing for you. And so how do we live as if that's true? How do you walk forward when everything in you wants to drift backwards or shrink back? And so let's talk about 4 anchors, 4 truths that hold you steady when the current of life starts pulling you under. Now, I need to quickly point out, I usually do not alliterate. Pastor Kent is the master alliteration person on our staff. And so I know his heart is going to be happy today because we're going to talk about 4 C's, beginning with commitment. Commitment, anchoring my identity. And so let me just say this up front. This is the kind of thing that gets no applause. I mean, it doesn't get applause. I mean, nobody stands and cheers for the steady and the committed. I mean, nobody does it. But when the waves hit, this is what keeps us from drifting, is commitment. If we're honest, a lot of us build our spiritual lives on good intentions. How about this? I will read my Bible. I will be more patient. I will serve, I will forgive, I will give, I will grow. I mean, those are all great intentions. They're all great things. But here's the problem. Saying I will is like tying your boat to the dock with dental floss. I mean, it's okay when it's calm, but when it gets a little choppy and gets a little windy, that's not going to hold. When the storm rolls in, it snaps every single time. That's why real commitment isn't just about what you do, it's about who you are. It's shifting from saying the words, I will try to follow Jesus, to absolutely declaring, I am a follower of Jesus. There's a difference between those 2 statements. It sounds small, but everything about your identity, when your identity is rooted in God, you draw your strength from Him, not from yourself. Because here's the deal. We're always being formed by something. Either it is the Spirit that's forming us, shaping us from the inside out, or it's our flesh that is quietly taking over. Again, Paul puts it this way. In Ephesians 5:18, he says, do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. Now, I do want to point out, he's not just talking about alcohol here. Other than that, it's a pretty strong statement that he makes here. He's talking about control. He's talking about what fills you and what direction that leads your life. And so in essence, what Paul is saying here is being drunk or being controlled by anything other than the Spirit leads to loss of self-control. It leads to wasteful living and unraveling of purpose. In fact, I just encourage you to just ask the Lord, what is it that you want me to hear? Because being filled with the Spirit leads to a fruitful life. Living with joy and wisdom and mutual encouragement, which he talks about in the next several verses there. But let me ask you this question, because here's really what he's talking about here. What is mastering you? For some of you, alcohol is a real issue. You may not know that in your own self, but others have told you that. What is mastering you? Maybe for you, it's porn. Maybe for you, it's food. Maybe for you, it's social media. What is filling you? What is filling your schedule? Are your impulses leading you? Is your pride rising up? And is that what you lean into and support? Here's the truth. You can't be led by the Spirit and be mastered by your flesh at the same time. You can't be mastered by both. It's one or the other. Now, you might not be bowing down to the golden idol, but if your comfort or your fear or your ego or your desires or your feeling good are calling the shots, you're still surrendering to those things. you are still being mastered, as Paul says, by those things. You're being tied to the wrong thing. But when your identity is anchored in who God says you are, that surrender becomes strength, because now the Spirit is driving, not your flesh. And so let me ask you, where in my life am I still living in I will when God is calling me to live in I am? Where am I still living in I will where God is calling me to I am? What truth about you are you in Christ needs to move from someday to now? Because here's the thing. Some of us know about God. We've got the right verses. We've got the right answers. We've got it all down. But when life hits, suddenly the question isn't, do I know what God says? It's, do I believe him enough to obey even when it doesn't make sense? Am I under control? Am I committed to him? And that's where this next anchor comes in. Courage. Anchoring my response to fear. Anchoring my response to fear. What is my courage? Courage is standing at the edge of something that God is asking me to do. It's heart pounding, it's stomach flipping, and praying, God, are you sure about this? Because I don't feel ready. Where is it that you need to be courageous? Let's be honest. Life gives us plenty of reasons to be afraid. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of change, one of the biggest, fear of not being enough. And the problem isn't feeling afraid. The problem is when fear gets to take all the shots. Listen, God never said, don't feel fear. He says, don't follow it. Don't give in to it. Don't be mastered by it. Over and over in Scripture says, God says, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Never once does he say, do not be afraid because you've got this. What he does say is, don't be afraid because I am with you. That's the anchor. That's where courage comes from. It's a reminder that courage doesn't come from confidence in ourselves. It comes from confidence in who is in the boat with you. Who is the master of your life? Think about David and Goliath for a moment. Israel's army is hiding. Goliath is taunting. And here comes the teenage shepherd, probably still smelling like sheep. And he's got bread and cheese delivering lunch, right? And when he steps onto the field, he says this. 1 Samuel 17, verse 45. He speaks to Goliath. He says, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. Don't miss this. David wasn't fearless. He was just more anchored to God than he was to the fear. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. He came against him because of the courage he had that he was not alone in this, that God was with him. He wasn't even supposed to be in the battle. He was just delivering lunch. While everyone else saw the threat, David saw this as an opportunity to trust God. And that's not just blind courage, that's anchored confidence. The truth is, some of you have been stuck. Not because you don't know what God's asking of you, but because fear keeps whispering, don't move, don't speak, don't try. Fear says you're not enough. God says, I am. I am enough. And so let me ask you, what step have you been postponing because the risk feels too big? Just take a moment and just think about that and ask the Lord to search your heart. What step have you been postponing because the risk feels too big? Ask the Lord. see, here's the truth. Courage is an absence of fear. It's obedience despite it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's obedience despite it. And so today, whatever it is, drop the anchor. Not in how you feel, not in your own strength, but in God's promise that He is with you. You see, fear isn't the only thing that keeps us stuck. This brings us to the next anchor, and the next anchor is simply this: capability. Anchoring in God's strength and not in my own. It's anchoring in God's strength and not my own. Can I just be real? This one hits pretty close to home. Have you ever felt like God is asking you to do something that you're not qualified for? Mine is every Monday morning, because it's the beginning of preparation for the Sunday to follow. That was Moses. God calls him from the burning bush. What does He say to him? He said, "You are going to lead my people out of Egypt." And Moses, what does he do? He panics. Right away, he panics, and he starts listing all the reasons why he's not the guy. But God doesn't hype him up. He just says to him, "I made you, I'm with you, I will help. You will not be alone." That is the anchor. Can I remind you that capability doesn't come from being awesome. It comes from knowing the one who is awesome and powerful and almighty. And here's the thing: God just doesn't equip you once and walk away. He grows you, He shapes you, He fills you again and again, and He trains you out of your obedience to Him. He grows us up in Him. You see, here's what I've learned. God will let you feel unqualified so you'll stay fully dependent on Him. Let me say it again. God will let you feel unqualified so you'll stay completely dependent on Him. What's God nudging you into? And your first response is, "I can't do that." Is it to share your story? Is it to forgive somebody? Is it to lead a group? Is it to give generously? What is it that the Lord is asking you to trust Him in? And everything in you is saying, "That's not me. I'm not ready." The good news is you're not ready on your own. And God's not asking for your confidence. He's just asking for your yes. Because your yes becomes the place where God begins to build something in you. Not just through the outcome, but through the process. And so if you feel underqualified, you're in great company. Because most of the Bible was written by people who didn't feel like they qualified either. And yet God used them mightily. They trusted in the one who was. See, the truth is, capability doesn't come from believing in yourself. It comes from believing that God is already at work and He's not done with you. It's realizing that you're not just stepping into something for God. He's already doing something in you. And that's how He builds both your impact and your character. And so maybe it's time to stop waiting to feel ready and just give Him your yes. And this is where the last anchor comes in. It's confidence. Confidence. Anchoring in God's love, not in my performance. Now, can I tell you, this one's really tricky to talk about. Because when we hear the word confidence, you might expect me to say something like this: "Well, you've got this. You're amazing. You're going to knock this out of the park. Go be the hero of your story." But can I be honest with you? If confidence were based on me, I would have quit preaching over 1,700 sermons ago. Some of you are like, "Do you know how many sermons you've preached in your life?" Absolutely, I do. It's 1,701. I would have quit 1,700 sermons ago. Because here's the reality. I feel inadequate. Every time I step onto the stage, I feel inadequate. Why? Because I get frustrated. I lose my temper. I second guess myself. I mess up. I struggle with the flesh. I struggle with the fact that I am not enough. I thought by my age that would go away, but it hasn't. I've had many Sundays where I've walked off stage thinking, well, that was a disaster. I think they need to get a refund. True story. When I left my first church, I had been there 8 years, and I was packing up, and I was looking through all the sermons, because that was back in the day where everything was on paper, right? Everything was on paper, and I was looking through, as I was boxing everything up, and I'm like, oh my goodness me, I need to ask for forgiveness for the last 8 years. And so I did on the last message of my time there. I said, I just have to ask for your forgiveness. You've sat through some horrible messages for the last 8 years. Maybe you have felt the same way, not with a sermon, but when it comes to parenting, when it comes to your job, when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to your marriage, when it comes to your walk with God. When you wonder deep inside, am I enough? Do I even belong here? That's why this anchor matters so much. Because real confidence doesn't come from believing in yourself. It comes from knowing how much you matter to the one who made you. That's where it matters. Take Paul for a moment. Just take Paul. Brilliant. He wrote half of the New Testament, and still, what did he talk about? What did he struggle with? He struggled with the thorn in the flesh. Now, we don't know exactly what it is. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask when I get to heaven, and I sit down with Paul for coffee, like, hey, what was the thorn in the flesh? All of us are dying to know. Like, tell us what it is. What did he do? He begged God to take it away, and yet God didn't. He didn't. In fact, 2 Corinthians 12:9, he says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And then it's almost like in verse 10, Paul gets it. It's like he understands it. Because in the very next verse, he says, that is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardship, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Not because pain is good, but because God's grace is better. It's just better. Don't miss it. God didn't remove the weakness. He didn't remove the thorn in the flesh. But here's what God was showing Paul, and it's what he wants you and I to see, that you don't have to be strong enough. That thorn, it wasn't some random flaw or failure. It was a reminder that grace is the point. That God's mercy is the point. That his perfection in us is the point. When God said his power is made perfect in weakness, that word perfect means complete, fully at work. In other words, God's strength doesn't just kick in after yours runs out. It shows up because yours does. His strength shows up because my strength always runs out. It always fails. That's what real confidence looks like, not built on performance, not on perfection, but on a grace that holds us when we can't. Some of you are carrying around a weight of trying to prove yourself, trying to earn God's approval, trying to keep up an image that says, I've got this. I've got it all together. Honestly, it's exhausting to do that. Friend, can I tell you, here, you don't have to carry that anymore. You can stop striving. You can let it go, because your confidence doesn't have to come from your performance. It can come from something better. The love of God, who already has called you his one, his only. And as you do, he will empower you. He will build you. He will fill you. And so today, if you're feeling like a failure, if you're doubting your worth, if you're tempted to quit, hear this. Your life matters to the one who matters the most. And that is your anchor. That's where confidence comes from, not in yourself, but in his unfailing love. And so let's just be clear for a moment. God's love isn't earned by your performance. It's already secured by what Jesus has done on the cross. It's already confirmed by what Jesus has finished. The cross anchors your worth. The empty tomb seals your future. And that's not just good theology. That's your anchor when everything else feels uncertain. That is the bedrock. And so when the waves hit, and you don't have to wonder if you're enough, because you get to rest on the one who's already finished the work on your behalf, who says you are enough. And if you live anchored like that, you're not just going to make it through the next storm, but you're going to become more like Jesus. Because that's what he does, is he shapes us. See, breakthrough doesn't come from trying harder. It starts when you believe that your life matters not because of you, but because of him. Because of him. And so here's the challenge this week. Pick one area in your life where you're praying for a breakthrough and drop one of these 4 anchors right here. Maybe it starts with belief. Maybe you just need to believe your life could really matter to God. If that's where you are, that's where you start. You don't need all the answers. You don't need to clean everything up first. You just need to say, Jesus, I trust you with my life. That's the first step. That's the beginning of a breakthrough that actually lasts. And for the rest of us, I just want you to look at those 4 anchors. Where do you need to start? What anchor do you need to start in? Is it commitment? That your identity needs to shift from I will to I am? Maybe it's the anchor of courage. What step is fear keeping you from taking? Maybe it's the anchor of capability. Where do you feel the most unqualified and you need his strength to empower you? Maybe it's the anchor of confidence. Where have you been relying on your own performance instead of his grace? Write it down. Pray about it this week and then take one step. Can I remind you, Joshua stood on the edge of the Jordan River, terrified, inadequate, overwhelmed, and yet God said to him 3 times, be strong and courageous. And here we see in our verse today, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. In other words, my friend, you are not alone. And your life matters to him. And maybe that's exactly what you need to hear today. Be strong and courageous because he is with you. He is with you. And so drop the anchor, take the step, and live like your life actually matters, because to God, it absolutely does. Would you all stand with me, all of our venues together, as we go to the Lord in prayer? Father, I thank you that our lives matter to your plan. I thank you that breakthrough doesn't happen by accident, but it happens when we live like our lives matter to you. Father, I pray that you would give us commitment, that you would give us courage, that you would make us capable, and that our confidence would be in you. And Father, I ask that you would help us to rest in the truth that our lives matter because of what you've done for us. Not because of our strength, but because we are yours. We ask this all in your name, Jesus, and everybody said, amen.